You gotta get into the groove.
Hello and welcome, football fans, to the Saturday Pigskin, exclusively right here on the OH Report, brought to you by Town and Money Saver. I am Brian Skowronski, the host, and with me every single week, the legend, the man, myth, legend, Effie James in the building, as always. Coach, one of my favorite sayings in the history of ever, Lovie Smith at that press conference where he melted down, "They are who we thought they were," is what he said. Now that we're 6 weeks in, I feel like that's what we can kind of say about all these teams at this point, right? We kind of know what we got.
You know, pretty much. And as a fan, you try to think that your team is maybe not what they're showing they are, but in truth, deep down in your heart, even as a fan, you start to say, well, maybe they are what we thought they were. But either way, the great thing about high school sports is there's always a chance, you always try. And with kids, you never know when or what time that switch is going to flip, and things could change for your season. We're still, even though we're late, 6 games in, we're only 6 games in. So that means a lot in high school football.
And the playoff picture can change so much here over the end stretch if you're playing a team that's up a couple of ranks or all that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and jump right into the highlights, folks, and we'll get you up to date on what happened Friday night right here in the Richland Runback. Ashland at Madison, Arrows seeking their 3rd straight win. Rams trying to play spoiler for their first conference victory of the season. Wouldn't happen though for the Game Green. Mitch Heilman was perfect on the night, 13 of 13 through the air. Coach, you were a former quarterback, pretty impressive numbers.
Absolutely. Being that efficient, especially early in the game, really takes the heart out of a opposing team.
Mason Cans had that touchdown reception, and just a rough night for the Madison offense, fumbling there in their own territory. They would not score at all in this game. Owen Reef, though, would right there. He takes pay dirt, and Ashland flies to 5-1, 49-zip. They shut out the Rams. Huron visiting Shelby at Skiles Field. Whippets trying to avoid a 3-game slide, and things did not start well for the kids at home. They fell behind early. This is Joe Wallace. He only had 2 carries on the night, but he finds 6 points on this one right here. Now off of play action, Bryce Van Veer catches a 28-yard strike from Drew Sterrett. It is 21-0 Tigers. Shelby would eventually get on the board, but it was just too much Huron on this night. Here it is, McGuire Albert throwing to Evan Bogner from 12 yards out. This cut it down 21-7. We saw Shelby play well earlier in the year. They just fell apart again in the second half. Coach, got blown out.
Absolutely. Sometimes a team's just not who we thought they were, like we talked about earlier. And Shelby, they've created this reputation the last couple years, and these kids have the tough task of trying to live up to that. Just not working out for them right now.
42-7. The Tigers roll to 5-1. Whippets now have lost 3 straight. Move on to Ontario hosting Buckeye Valley. Warriors needing a win to try to keep pace in the MOAC after dropping a tough one last week. And my guy, the Water Bug, a.k.a. Owen Hatfield, had Ontario set up in solid position all night. This kid's got to be one of my favorite players, Coach. 5'4", 120 pounds, doing stuff like this. Come on.
Very quick and elusive in the open field. And what they say about size is not always works against you in football. It can work for your good, especially in space. This kid really taking advantage of it.
Brock Hill was in at quarterback for Ontario. He would find Deja Wilson here. He takes it 49 yards all the way to Pater. Ontario led 10-3 at the break, but the second half, the Barons got the running game going. Big plays. They can just kill you.
The second half is always the time for running the football. If you can run the football later on in the season as the weather starts to change, if you got a power running game, you can really put some games away. Buckeye Valley did just that this week.
And they held Ontario out of the end zone twice late to preserve the victory. Lucas hosting Crestline. Dogs looking for back-to-back victories. Jeb Grover, though, he returned from injury and he had some other ideas. This kid put on a show Friday night. Number 44 in black went over 2 honey buns on the ground in this game. As a team, the Cubs racked up nearly 400 yards rushing. You were just talking about it. Man, if you can get that going, it's deadly, and clearly it is here.
You know, the speed of Grover is really, really just, it astounds me every week while watching, because you look at him physically, he looks like a guy who's going to be a power back, but he also can turn on the speed, and that's the difference in your running game when you got a guy that can go the distance. And the Cubs are really taking advantage of it, pounding him, getting him a lot of carries, and then looks like the defense even got involved as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Our friend of the program there, Ty Clark, sacked in the backfield. And then Lucas, they just rolled in this thing. It was never a contest. 48-0. The Cubs now 4-2 overall on the season. They're going to be tough to beat at full strength with Grover in that backfield.
They will be.
And last but not least, a great Richland County rivalry. Lexington on the road at Arlen Field. Mansfield seniors Cam Todd making his first start under center. The Ontario transfer has brought so much hype with him to the program. Early on, so did the Tigers defense, a safety 2-0 game.
Absolutely. Right away, the Tigers are into this game. You could feel the excitement for Cam Todd's entrance in the Tigers football.
And that's the super freak making a catch, Angelo Grose. It was 9-0 senior high. It looked like they were going to roll on this thing. Lexington came in at 1-4, but this play to me changed absolutely everything. Lex Jr. Kayden blocks the punt and even recovers it for a touchdown. And Cade Stover, the human locomotive, got the engine fired up full speed in the second half. This one is a 53-yard touchdown. Now Stover showing off the torque. 17 yards in for the score. You were telling me off camera you felt like you could tell that he was an Ohio State prospect in this game.
He legitimized himself in a lot of people's eyes this game by showing his speed. You know, everybody know he has the moxie and the toughness to play at Ohio State. People kind of question his speed, but this game he was running away from a few Tigers, and that really legitimized him as a player. Lexington, huge win on the road for them.
44-16, as you mentioned, they win it going away. All right, let's talk about the OCC now, because last night I covered the game, you were also at the game, and it felt like not only Mansfield Senior could have won that game, they could have blown out Lexington very easily. A long pass to Angelo Grose got wiped off the board at 81-yard completion. That would have made it 16-0. Instead, Lexington gets it going in the second half. What's your thoughts, though, of just the accumulation of the negative plays that added up to Mansfield Senior? It looked like quit a little bit in that second half.
It was, and you know, the one of the issues with Mansfield Senior is that they are a young team, and when I say young, meaning guys that haven't played under the lights of starting, and because of that, when things went bad, you could start to see them drop their heads, and it was and even at the highest, it was a 3-score game with plenty of time to go, and I felt like the Tigers really just couldn't pull it together. And they have tremendous amount of potential, but I think they let some of the mistakes and the turnovers and the penalties really get to them. You know, you talk about taking away an 80-yard reception off the board, 2 kickoff returns off the board. You know, it's tough for any team to come back from that. So they played a game where they made a few mistakes, and also it didn't help that their youth kind of didn't let them rebound from those mistakes, and that really cost them down the stretch.
And then Cam Todd in his Tigers debut, just 9 of 27, only 102 yards, touchdown, interception. He did run it for 55 yards, which is not something that he's really known for, more of a guy to stay in the pocket and throw, but obviously not what he was running out of his first start. Ashland destroys Madison, no surprise there, Coach. I was a bit stunned, though, by the Worcester West home score, where the Generals just destroy him, 47-20. Are you kidding me? Did you see that coming?
Yeah, that one shocked me, too. I really thought that would be a really tough game. You know, those two teams have been playing well. West Holmes has to have a ton of confidence, but that score really kind of shook me. But it shows a couple things. Number one, Worcester is for real, and it also shows that this conference is deeper than we thought it was, because those teams are playing well, even though you know, West Holmes got the loss, and West Holmes has got a couple really quality wins in this league. It shows the depth and the fact that you've got to play every single night. And the Lex win against Mansfield Senior also shows that.
So the Generals are the only 3-0 team that we actually have in the OCC right now. Lex and Ashland still in the mix. Ashland hasn't lost the game yet, but they're only 2-0. Who, in your opinion, is the real contenders here? Who's maybe a pretender, if there is one at this point?
Wow, that is a tough question. This conference is so super competitive, and it gets to a point where it's not so much about who is the better team, it's about who can pull together the best game. I certainly can see Ashland, you know, setting themselves apart in this league, but I could also see Worcester setting themselves apart. So it's it's still a race. I'm trying not to be a homer here, but I still think that Mansfield could make things tough for the teams down the stretch. Worcester, they still have yet to play Worcester and Ashland. So with their potential now with Cam Todd getting another week of experience and timing with his receivers, which I thought his timing was kind of off this week. They play Ashland this coming week. Things could change in a hurry, and I think Mansfield Seniors could be the wild card. I'm not sure if they can help themselves in terms of a playoff chase, but
I think with 2 losses, actually, I'm going to go ahead and count the Tigers out of the picture at this point, though I appreciate you being a homer and always sticking up for your TY Tigers. Lex still gets West Holmes and Ashland the next couple of weeks. I actually feel like they could play themselves into the mix if they continue to play well. And then Worcester hosts the Arrows the last week of the regular season, so that actually probably could determine this thing. It could be pretty fun to see. A conference chase I think is less interesting is the MOAC, where I think there's 2 clear favorites when you see Clear Fork, 48-6 winner last night over River Valley, and then the Colts get to play Gallion and Ontario over the next 2 weeks. From what we've seen from Clear Fork, is there any reason not to believe that they're going to be 8-0 when they take on Marion Pleasant, who we all assume is going to be 8-0 during that game as well?
Right. The only thing that comes into play is the teenage factor and the fact that you are still dealing with high school young men, not collegiate level discipline, and certainly not professional level discipline. They have been reading, they see the hype, they see the records, they see that they should win, they see that they should be playing for the championship, and the only thing that can hold those teams back is themselves, coming into games a little bit unprepared, a little bit unfocused. And I'm telling you, we've seen how the snowball can start on a team, and momentum means a lot. Lex can attest to that from last night. Momentum means a lot. You get a couple turnovers, and all of a sudden you're a big favorite, and doubt starts to creep in, and you look up, and it's the 4th quarter, and now you're in a game that shouldn't be a game. So that's, again, to me, that's the beauty of high school sports, is the fact that a lot of these young men have to learn to be and stay focused no matter who their opponent is. But at this point, looking at that league and as well as Clear Fork has been playing, and Pleasant as well, they're certainly on a collision course, and they could be or are their own worst enemy if they don't come in undefeated at the end.
The Colts look real firm right now in the playoff picture, second right now in D4, Region 14. Their 2 upcoming opponents that I talked about, Gallion and Ontario, that they had a mixed bag this last week. Gallion won a thriller over Marion Harding on a last-second field goal, and Ontario had a chance to win and couldn't. So they both could have been in the playoff picture at this point, and now maybe aren't. At least the Warriors aren't. So Clear Fork, I think, probably is the favorite in the league, the defending champions. And then in the Northern 10 Conference, Effie, I'm going to say something that's never been said in the history of this league. Winford lost a football game in N10 play, 47-14. They actually got beat down by Seneca East. The Tigers are 5-1, though. Pretty good team. You surprised to hear that score, just given what the Royals have done for, 4 straight years?
I'm surprised to hear that score, and the fact that, a winning culture is something that is so, it translates to points in a game. Like when got a school that you're used to winning, it translates to points. But I will say this, Gabe Helbert, I guarantee you in the back of his mind, somewhere deep in the back of his mind, he's thinking, at this point of our season and my coaching career, maybe we needed this. And maybe he's probably not thinking it as of today, but I think he will later on. That He'll appreciate the fact that, we needed a wake-up call and we needed to be refreshed and hit a reset button. So now you can come into the stretch of the season really focused and locked in for another. If things go right for them, they could get into the playoffs, but be really focused going into the playoff hunt.
I think Winford actually, now looking at it, I think they're outside of the playoff mix for the first time probably in many, many years, though.
As long as I can remember.
A super young team, though. I don't really know. Maybe this is a wake-up call for them, but they mostly play sophomores out there. I was a little bit surprised, actually, that they were off to the impressive start that they had then. And then Mohawk stayed undefeated in the league, a slugfest. They win at Colonel Crawford 14-7 last 2 weeks. The Eagles have won those tight games where they could be one of the favorites in the league. Instead of that, as mentioned, the Warriors still perfect at 6-0. They're probably the favorite, I would think, in the conference at this point. So some big performances there by some big-time players and all around the area. Let's show you right now who we thought were your Friday Night Phenoms presented by MWD Logistics.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Let's kick things off with a wide receiver out there in the valley. A.J. Blubaugh, 4 catches, 94 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. We give so much love to the two quarterbacks out there, and rightfully so, because they're both incredibly dynamic. A.J. caught a touchdown from each Jared Schaefer and Brennan South in this football game, and I feel like he's one of the underrated players on the squad as a senior, one of the leaders out there. Clear Fork just keeps smacking teams around, man. It's impressive to watch.
Yeah, and it shows as a receiver, if you can catch passes, touchdowns from each quarterback, that means they're doing a lot of work offensively, and both quarterbacks are getting a lot of reps so they can get the rhythm with all their receiving staff. That's really impressive for receivers and quarterbacks when you're playing two of them.
And my favorite thing about this Clear Fork team, what makes me truly believe that they're going to be a handful to deal with throughout the rest of the season, they can throw it and run it equally. They're a very, very balanced team. Speaking of balance, this kid gets it done on both sides of the ball. Look at that, 15 carries, 228 yards on the ground. I guarantee that's a career high for Cade Stover in the rushing department. A couple of touchdowns, and we talked about it, the speed that he showed against probably one of the fastest teams that we have in all of this area. He ran away from some Tigers last night.
He did. He legitimized himself as one of the top players in this area. Defensively, I remember when we coached Jamario O'Neal, there came a time defensively where his aggressiveness started to show, and you could really see what made him a D1 prospect, and Cade showed those. His hits had bad intentions when he would come over to make hits, and that really makes the difference. And at this point, he's a seasoned veteran, making a real huge difference for his team.
17 tackles in the game. That was the most by any player, and you can see that doesn't even need a helmet to take down players. Cade Stover is a true phenom. Kayden Berry had an all-around game too. I thought that he was a flat-out game changer, like I mentioned, the block punt and the ability to recover it for a touchdown when his team was trailing 9-0. This is the play right there. Coach, that to me was probably the biggest play of the night.
Yeah, big plays, and Barry just having the nose is such a difference between blocking a kick, but also recovering it is a whole nother skill when you block that kick. So he had a great night, and also I thought he had just had a great night overall. You always saw him carrying the ball, making some plays on some crucial downs for Lex last night.
Yeah, the 15 carries, 147 yards, and showed not only just a little bit of wiggle, but also some strength. He ran through some arm tackles last night.
He did. He was really impressive.
So Kayden Berry makes the list as well. And guess what? We actually have a third player coming up on this list from this very game. It is none other than the super freak, Angelo Grose. I believe it's his third time that he's making this list. But you see everything that he does for them, Effie. 2 of its touchdowns were called back, and we're going to show them both right here. But 6 catches led the team by a lot, 48 yards, and then this beautiful touchdown catch that he has right here to lay out. He's just an all-around dynamic athlete. Also a pretty good defensive player, too, for them.
Right. When you talk about doing it all, this Gross kid is absolutely amazing. I saw some of his speed when you run back a kick. It's so difficult to run back a kick because it's easy to get past that. But when people have the angle on you, and you outrun the angle, that shows tremendous speed, and he is also a tremendous track athlete, and he's able to do it all. Somebody was arguing that he may be one of the best all-around athletes to ever play at Mansfield Senior. Now, if you want to start an argument amongst Mansfield Senior alum, you say that, and a lot of people have already said that, but either way, he is a tremendous talent, and he tries to do it all for the Tigers, just couldn't do enough on this night. But either way, it doesn't take away the fact that he is a big play guy, and he is a tremendous recruit, even now, I would say.
Yeah, a national recruit, no question about it. I don't know if this guy's getting very many college looks, but Jeb Grover on the high school football field is one of the best players flat out that we've had in a few years, I think, in this area. He's now a senior. He's been doing this type of stuff for 4 seasons now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get carried away sometimes with the fact that a kid is a recruit, and if he's not a recruit, that doesn't take away from his high school accolades. The point is to be as good of a player and have as much impact on your team as possible as a high school player. So who knows what he could be in college? All I know is right now he is dominating as a running back for Lucas, and that means a lot. And no matter what happens, these are the days he'll never forget, no matter whether he goes to college or not. And he is a tremendous athlete and really a star down there in what has become a really tradition-rich football program here in the later years.
They've had some really good running backs over the last, I would say, probably 8 years or so.
Yeah.
I would have to look at the record books out there, but I think Jeb Grover probably rewriting them. 211 and 4 more touchdowns for this senior Cub. Those are your Friday Night Phenoms for Week 6, brought to you by MWD Logistics. So making the list for Friday Night Phenoms, I think, at least for the second time, maybe a third, Cade Stover, a future Ohio State Buckeye. Huge game they got tonight out in Happy Valley, taking on Penn State. Give me your thoughts, Coach. What do you really think is going to happen tonight? Don't be a homer like you usually can be. How do you think it's going to play out?
I will tell you this. I didn't understand what it meant until a couple years ago when they played at Happy Valley and that environment. You know, you think, well, these aren't high school kids. These guys are, you know, adults. All that after the game starts, it's not going to bother them. But I am telling you what, there is no environment that I've seen, at least on television, like, you know, the Penn State environment. And I know if Ohio State doesn't come ready to play, particularly if their offense doesn't come ready to play, it could be a long night. They are going to have to score a lot of points. McSorley for Penn State is an outright, flat out. I don't know if he's going to be a pro. It doesn't matter. He is a star for Penn State, and they put points on the board. So we'll see if Ohio State can match that and hopefully exceed that on the night.
Trace McSorley reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield, who very soon is probably going to take the Browns to the Super Bowl. I think he's that kind of talent. But like you said, and I believe this, and I heard James Franklin talking about it earlier in the week on a radio interview. He said that he's been a lot of different places, coached in the NFL, coached at a few different big-time universities. He said when they do the whiteout at Happy Valley, he said there's just nothing like it. He said it still gives him tingles all the way through his fingers down to the whole bare of his bones, man, when it comes down to it. Awesome environment, but I think the Ohio State offense isn't going to get shut down. I think Dwayne Haskins is the real deal. I'll take the Buckeyes something like 38-31.
I like Haskins. I do. I think his potential is through the roof. But truly, and I know they played TCU last week, and that was a nice test. And I, whoever the schedule makers for Ohio State really done a great job, because I thought they built well for this week. And playing TCU was another step, and then to come home and play Tulane kind of as a you know, build up and get you ready for a big game like Penn State. They scheduled well, but I just don't know. You know, and that's the thing about young quarterbacks specifically. You can play a lot of young players at different positions, but at quarterback, you don't know what you're going to get. And Haskins, for as good as he's looked, is really going to expose himself. And I will tell you, if he does play well, which I think he can, you will see Heisman talk from here on out, because this is going to be the game that identifies, or his identity is created in this game tonight. And since I do want them to win, I will say I think Ohio State wins by 2 scores tonight. Ooh. And a high-flying, both teams get over 30 points.
Love it. So you heard it here first. Buckeyes going to win out at Happy Valley tonight. Thank you all for watching, and join us right back here next Saturday on the Pigskin. So long.